Okay, everyone, joined by Kevin Martitz now, Citizens for Local Choice. He is talking about an issue that a lot of you watching my show are upset about, and I know it. So we're talking about basically government control when it comes to local versus state. Yeah, Kevin, tell us exactly how did this all come about?
Well, I'm a county commissioner here in Lenawee County, and I've been involved in zoning and land use as a zoning administrator and planning commission for many years prior. And so, traditionally these land uses like wind and solar and battery storage for electricity, actually all power plants and nuclear gas, all subject to local regulations. Um, the governor and the Democrats, and I'm not making this a partisan issue, but the record shows this was only a Democratic proposition in the state, decided that they wanted to streamline the permitting process for these utility scale renewable and storage projects. And they passed a law that, even though they claim somehow preserves local control, has utterly stripped local regulation of these facilities from any value. There's nothing left of any value to a local unit of government.
And is it only wind, solar? Is it only specifically that, or is it broader? Is it? I didn't read the entire legislation,
Sure.
but does it target only the energy, that part of it?
Strictly wind energy, solar energy, and battery storage above 50 megawatts in size, or 100 megawatts, I think, in the case of solar or wind. I forget which, but the bottom line is those numbers are irrelevant. Those have just guaranteed that no developer will ever propose anything under those limits, because they're all going to want to be dealing with the state and not the local units of government.
And you have townships and governments from red counties, blue counties, speaking out against this. I know there's township managers, county commissioners, mayors on all political sides, I believe, that are concerned about this.
The Michigan Township Association did polling on this in the fall. There's 87% opposition statewide to this law. 85%, I think, Democrats, 91% Republican. And in the Detroit area, city of Detroit polled 70% opposition and 90% opposed in the outlying Wayne County. And the Upper Peninsula is 91% opposed, and which is easy to understand. The UP has a long history of being distrustful of the things that affect them being done down in Lansing. So it's hugely bipartisan. There is no majority support for this out in the districts.
What would you say? I've read information on this, and others might say, and the lawmakers who voted for it, well, this maybe needed to be done because if you had it with local control, no one would ever approve any of this locally. That's what I hear the argument is. They're like, well, it's the person. I don't want it in my backyard. And what if everyone said they didn't want it in their backyard? That's the argument I hear.
Well, that is the argument, but we do have some evidence to the contrary. Wisconsin and Ohio both had state level siting for wind and solar projects for many, many years. In fact, they still do, though Ohio finally gave counties the right to exempt part or all of their district with a majority vote of their commissioners of wind or solar or both. But those states have had a long history of state level siting, yet Michigan has managed to install more than twice as much wind energy than Wisconsin and Ohio combined. And we're on par at the same pace with those states with solar development. So one of the reasons there's so many rejections here is developers have seen that they perceive small township governments being easy pickings. So many more projects have been proposed in the state, and townships have figured out after a while that, hey, this is not different than any other land use. We get to decide. But the other myth here is that these townships have just outright rejected these things. But that's not true. And Monroe County is a great example. Their planning commissions in township after township looked at the proposals for solar and said, there is a place for solar in our township. It's in our industrial district. And they wrote zoning to permit it in the industrial district. But the message that's not out to most people is the size of the solar projects being proposed in our townships is typically 3 square miles. We're not talking 50 acres. We're talking 1,500 to 2,000 acres, 3,000 acres. In some cases, 15 or 20% of an entire township would be covered with solar panels. It's not an illogical or irrational objection to say, wait a minute.
Under the legislation as it stands now, there is nothing anyone on the local level can do about it?
Well, the proponents of the bill are being very aggressive in their messaging that, oh no, we added amendments to that made sure the locals have a voice. But the bottom line is local control means you can determine the size, the scale, the noise limits, the location, the zoning district of any given land use. And the townships and cities and villages and counties have lost their right to do any of those things unless their ordinance matches the state guidelines, which frankly are so permissive. Renewable developers would build to those development standards if they were completely unregulated. That's how permissive the state standards are. So yes, you can do it locally, but only if you do it the way the Public Service Commission dictates. So you do it our way or you do it our way.
So so I'm up in Saginaw County, Michigan, which is a big hotbed issue for that actually up here.
Indeed.
And well, throughout the state. But so I'm Saginaw County. You're really not alone in making your own decisions. You would have to abide by certain criteria already set by that commission then.
Well, yeah, the law sets the setback standards for wind energy and the noise limits. Same thing with solar. And you can do, but they are so permissive as to not be any meaningful regulation whatsoever. So yes, if you give the developer carte blanche in your local ordinance, in other words, they do whatever they want, then you can pretend you're controlling it, or you can let the Public Service Commission do the exact same thing.
Okay, so what can be done to reverse this? This is a petition signature. I know it's going to be tough, but what are the steps? How can this happen? If people are interested, how can they sign up and what needs to happen?
Well, the first thing they can do to be informed is to sign up at our website, which is micitizenschoice.org, micitizenschoice.org, and sign up there and you can get our information. You can donate. I mean, we need so what are we doing? We've started the process, a petition process. It's in front of the Board of Canvassers on January 19th. And if this language is approved, we'll gather the signatures. We're looking for about 550,000 signatures for an adequate margin of safety. And what our language does is simply reverse the local zoning preemption law that was put into effect. That's the only thing it does. We're staying out of the energy policy debate. We're not arguing about whether wind and solar and batteries are a good fit. That's a discussion for other people. We're simply saying that there's great places for solar in this state, but we think they should go on brownfields, landfills, MDOT rights of way, and rooftops, and not be directed like this legislation does, almost exclusively to agricultural ground and forest ground in the Upper Peninsula.
Is there a certain amount of signatures you have to have in a certain amount of time, right? Or how many, 100,000 or?
550,000 is the number we're seeking, and we'd like to have that done by May 29th in order to get it on this fall's ballot. We have 180 days, which would be beyond that deadline, and we would hate to end up there, but that would put it then on the fall ballot of 2026, which is nearly 2 years after the law goes into effect, which is, of course, not our purpose here.
Yeah, which I think many people would like to have the option themselves to vote for it.
And that's the great thing. You don't even have to commit to your position on this issue to sign the petition. The petition simply gives people then the right to vote if we gather enough signatures. So we're looking for county captains to help us in various parts of the state. You can sign up for that on our website, people to help coordinate these efforts. We're working with other statewide stakeholder groups, waiting for them hopefully to formally commit to working with us, but we're reaching out to the municipal groups. And there's a number of groups that are on record opposing this, including Michigan Farm Bureau, Michigan Township Association, Michigan Association of Counties, Michigan Municipal League. They all oppose this law and are with us in spirit. Yeah, they don't oppose our petition drive. I saw the look on your face.
I was wondering, I'm like,
they opposed this law and stood with us in opposition to it last November. But we're working with them and networking with them and praying that their network comes alongside with us as we continue to move this ball down the field.
Yeah, I'll send this out to share, because we're in America and the people have the right. You have a right to have a petition drive and so forth. And it's important to let people know, if they sign this doesn't mean that they're reversing the legislation. By signing the petition, you're just putting it in the hands of voters.
Of the people. That's right. And you're right. This is so nonpartisan. And I like to make this point, as you know better than many, we're in a deeply fractious time politically in our state and nationwide. What we've known locally is that renewable energy development is never partisan in the rural areas. You don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican if 3 square miles of solar are coming. I say that we will be approaching this in a bipartisan fashion. And I see this as a chance for the people of the state of Michigan to look past Lansing, look past DC, and reach across the aisle, take hands with people on the other aisle, and fight for something that's clearly in the common good. I think that can be a healing exercise for our state.
I agree. And also a situation to educate people about, because a lot of people don't know. Well, they don't know what goes on in Lansing a lot, but they don't know about renewable energy and solar. It can open up a whole discussion as well, all of this.
It can. And right now, unfortunately, this legislation was driven almost exclusively by out-of-state corporate utility scale renewable energy developers. The process went through in about 4 weeks, not weeks or months of deliberation, very limited public comment. It's really an unhealthy piece of legislation and put together in the most unhealthy fashion.
Well, I will put this out there for people. I appreciate it. And you said the Board of Canvassers, they're meeting soon to approve it. When do we know if they will approve it?
Well, we'll see January 19th. We pray that they
January 19th.
approve it. They should. It's well written. We've used great legal counsel, but they could punt for another month, which tightens that window up for us even more. But I will say this, we're not going away.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'll get this out there.
Thanks, Dave. Have a great afternoon.